because I think this is a really important topic in the context that we've been talking today. So y'all know this is the case, that we live in a very multicultural society where bilingualism is becoming somewhat the norm. In Metro Vancouver alone, 21% of people now speak more than one language. You can see that there are many different language groups, Punjabi, Cantonese, Chinese, Mandarin being among the top, but others as well. So we know that bilingualism is very, very prevalent in Canada. And from a 2012 study that was done by Mandy K. Rainingbird in Nova Scotia, we also know that bilingualism is very prevalent among families of kids with autism. So she surveyed 49 bilingual families from Canada and other countries. And of those 49 families, 75% reported that they were raising their child with ASD to be bilingual or even multilingual, that is 3 languages, 61% 2, 14% 3 languages. So we know that this is a very common phenomenon within the autism community as well. So I want to talk about 3 things today. I want to start by talking about parents' experiences, because I think it's important to hear the voices of families, and then talk about what do we know from research about the question of whether kids with autism are hurt, hindered, or not affected at all by being raised in bilingual families. Right? Because I think for many families who speak more than one language, this is a real concern. Okay? So back to that study, of the 37 families, only 8% in that study reported that they were consistently encouraged by professionals to raise their children bilingually. And in fact, professional opposition to bilingualism came from many different sources. Physicians, who just took quite a bashing in the last panel, but oh well, what can I say? Speech-language pathologists and psychologists, somewhat surprisingly, and of course social workers and teachers. And in some cases, families kind of use their own logic and say, well, my kid has autism, which means he has a language problem, so if he already has a language problem, probably he shouldn't hear 2 languages, he should only hear 1, and so I'll stop speaking one of the 2 languages or 3 languages that's common in my home. But in this case, these families were often told by professionals to stop speaking the second language. 89% of the respondents in the study reported they had no access to professional help or services that supported bilingual language development. We've already heard that several times in the last 2 days. But 46% of the parents reported that their bilingually raised children had very strong either receptive or expressive understanding in both languages, and another 22% said that they were acquiring at least 1 language successfully. So you can see that there's a disconnect between sometimes what parents are told and what parents' experience is. And there are actually 3 qualitative studies that have looked at this, all done in the United States, all of interviews with moms of children with autism between ages 3 and 8. In the Jagathesan study, the families spoke English and one of the Hindi, Arabic, or other South Asian languages. In the Fernandez y Garcia study, the moms spoke English or English plus 1 other language. And in the U study, the moms all spoke English and Chinese. So you see quite a large cultural spread there. And here's some of the things that came out of those studies. I'm going to show you some quotes by some of the moms. I'm not going to read all of them. One of them is that the families universally acknowledge the importance, in this case, of learning English, of having their children with autism learn English. In particular, I'll read this one. Once he steps outside of our home and our community, Jaleel needs English. If something happens to him and he needs help, then who can help him if he cannot speak English? Someday he might want to work when he's big. Who will hire him if he cannot speak English? Without English, it's not possible to survive in America. We need to prepare him for his life here. He's never going back to Bangladesh. America is his home. Now, of course, this was a US study, but substitute Canada, right? So these parents absolutely understood the importance of learning English to their children. They also understood the importance of maintaining the home language. Here's a couple of quotes from these studies. In particular, I'll read the second one. It's important, Mrs. Yusof said, it's important for Rakib to be with his grandmother and aunts, uncles, and be able to talk to them. His grandmother, older aunts, cannot speak English well. Rakib and his grandmother understand one another. Even if it is a few words, he responds, and it makes my mother-in-law happy. Being able to talk to one another has allowed them to have their own special relationship. Even if he combines a few words, some sounds and gestures, that is fine. At least he is trying to talk to his grandmother. I mean, that one just breaks my heart, right? The idea that he wouldn't be able to have a relationship with his own grandmother if, in fact, the home language wasn't supported. So that's a piece of this. In addition, for some families, in particular the families in the Jegathesan study, the mums talked about the importance of maintaining the home language as the language of their religion, because in order to be a Muslim, one has to learn to pray the ritual prayer in Arabic. This is the highest goal these mums wanted for their children. And they took responsibility to teach their kids how to pray in a number of different ways. Again, so in this case, Mrs. Khan said, when he sleeps, I turn on a cassette tape. He listens to that and then he falls asleep. We taped his brother's voice with all the du'as and the surahs, and he listens everything. This will help his memorization of the words, right? She's playing the cassette tape as he sleeps at night to try to make sure that he hears the Arabic so he can learn the prayers of his community. And Mrs. Yusof said, I make him sit next to me, I say my prayers aloud, and he hears, I say mine 3 times a day, and with him I do 2 times a day, so forth and so on. This is a mom of a child who doesn't speak, and yet she's so committed to having him exposed to the home language for the sake of learning the language of her religion. So it's a bigger issue than just a simple cultural issue for many families. It's also a matter of spiritual, a matter of faith, right? These families also acknowledged in these interview studies the challenges of having to speak English only. And again, a number of these mums talked about this. Speaking English is not as easy as speaking Chinese. After work, you're tired. You want to relax. Why should I speak in English? Said one mom. You know, when you're cuddling them and all, I didn't know what to say, she said, when she was trying to speak English only. How can they expect me to speak English with him? I failed at it. Then I thought, if I could not help him in English, then I will do it in Chinese. That is how I felt. I also felt really inadequate, said this mom. I couldn't help my son because my English was not good enough, so I felt bad. She's trying to do what she was told to do, and she can't do it, right? Again, my English is not good. And when I speak, I mix Urdu and have a strong accent. This is great. So late at night, we go to Walmart, and I let him explore because there are not many people around at that time. And I teach him to speak English to the staff and the cashier. Right? This is a mom who's so adamantly trying to do what she's been told to do that she keeps her kid up till 10 o'clock at night so she can go to Walmart to do it. Right? And of course, parents have all kinds of different reactions to this professional advice. Again, I'm not going to read all of these. I'll read the last one because I love Mrs. Khan the most. He has grandparents and they cannot speak English, says Mrs. Khan. So how our child can communicate with his grandmother if he knows only English? What they are asking is unreasonable, she said. So it is best we don't tell them anything. They don't need to know that we speak at home because it's a headache for us to help make them understand. They just don't. Go, Mrs. Khan. But many families don't rebel against the advice, right? Yiling in the U study said she recommended that we designate a certain room in the house to speak English. I don't think that's very practical. It doesn't feel very natural to us, and yet she did try to do it. Right, because this is what she was told to do, right? Right. So these qualitative studies, I think, just give us the flavor of what these families are faced with when they're making this decision around bilingualism, and they often try to follow this advice, even though there are many negative side effects. Right. So the question, I think, from a quantitative research perspective, because I think there's complementarity here, is which way should families go? Are professionals right that it's going to hurt them, their kids, if they speak two languages at home, and they should try to switch to English even if it makes them miserable? Or is there research evidence to the contrary?